Martin Luther name. He wouldn't love.
What's up, everybody? We're going to get started in just a moment. I want to get these numbers up on Facebook. You're coming in. You're checking in. North Campus, you're in the house. Calvary Nation, Southern Nation. Listen, it's going to be epic tonight. It's going to be fire. Listen, as a matter of fact, start a watch party. Hit the share button right now. I promise you, this is going to be worth watching over and over again. Tonight, it's going to be the 4th of July. I got two of my favorite people in the whole wide world. I'm telling you, man, two bright, shining stars. Start a watch party. Hit the share button. On the spot, Pastor X, it's Friday night, y'all. Get some popcorn, get some Kool-Aid. Listen, this is gonna be better than Netflix, I promise you. Informative, inspirational, intellectual, stimulating conversation. Listen, we've been cleared for takeoff tonight. Welcome to Friday night edition of On the Spot. As you can see, this is Pastor X, and I'm excited tonight to roll out the red carpet for two individuals. Listen, I'm going to introduce them and present them in just a moment. As being the moderator tonight, allow me some privilege, some liberty to lay out where we are and what's this all about. Unless you've been living under a rock or on another planet, you know the current climate and culture, the temperature that we find ourselves in here in these divided states of America. The movie has turned into a nightmare, and it's past time that we turn the channel. Enough is enough. And I remember as a kid watching Star Wars, the Empire must strike back. We have a justice system in America that is unjust. I need to say that again. We have a justice system in America that is unjust. It accommodates and exonerates some, while the same justice system frustrates and eliminates, terminates others, depending on what color of your skin and depending on the stroke of the pen, determines in a very real sense tonight in America whether one lives or whether one would die. Tonight, I thought it not robbery to talk about this issue, talk about what's going on, especially a few days ago in light of the decision in Louisville, Kentucky, surrounding that beautiful Black sister by the name of Breonna Taylor. As a child growing up in the Los Angeles Unified School District, to be exact, the LaSalle Elementary School. I remember going to the LaSalle Elementary School, and on any given day, every morning, I recall turning to that corner of the classroom where the flag was there, placing my right hand over my heart and joining in with different peers, different classmates, and we would recite as children something called the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to its republic for which it stands. This is what they told us as kids. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As children, we were indoctrinated and we were taught patriotism. We was taught as kids to be loyal to this country, and this country would be loyal to you, irrespective of race, sex, creed, or color. To sound or to be King S tonight, Martin Luther King Jr., America has wrote a bounce check. It has returned to us insufficient funds. And I want to say tonight that this whole gamut of one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all, that may be true for y'all, but it ain't true for all. Yes, in America, I want to go on record tonight, and I know my guests, they are chopping at the bit. Listen, I got a pet bull and a Doberman pincher tonight. I'm going to take the chain off their neck and let them run around in the backyard and do what we do. But let me say this. I want to go on record and say in America, yes, we have come a long way. We have a long way to go. For the most part, white America has never practiced what she has preached. Systemic racism in America is not rhetoric, it is reality. And in the spirit of Nathan confronting the King David, we come tonight to say to white America, thou art the man. In the spirit of Moses speaking truth to power to Pharaoh, we say tonight, it's past time to let my people go. In the spirit of Esther, she said, if I perish, let me perish, but I'm going to see the king. So here it is tonight. David thought that he has gotten away with his sin, but here come the prophet Nathan. We say tonight to white supremacy and lopsided criminal justice system and all who aid and assist in the practice and perpetuation of such egregious acts, thou art the man. The question is tonight, where is justice for Breonna Taylor? Where is justice for George Floyd, for Ahmaud Arbery, for Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, and the list goes on and on and on. Marvin Gaye said, what's going on? What's going on in these divided states of America? Tonight, Friday night, special edition, on the spot. This is Pastor X. It's going down like 4 flat tires. My special guests tonight are 2 amazing people. I said in the genesis of the live, they are 2 of my favorite people. In my opinion, 2 gifted, 2 of the most gifted, most brightest, most intelligent, most informed, cutting edge millenniums that you will find anywhere on planet Earth. One happens to be a daughter of the church I'm privileged to pastor. She currently resides on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital. I'm so godly proud of this spiritual daughter. She hails from the University of Southern California, or the University of Spoiled Children, as we would say. Has a Bachelor of Arts degree in communication management, turned around, stayed at that institution of higher learning at USC, matriculated and got her master's degree in communication management, works now on the East Coast for a national education nonprofit there in Washington, D.C. I'm so godly proud to call her daughter, to call her to be called pastor. Ebonee Rice, what's up, girl?
What's up? What's up? Hi everyone. I'm so blessed and so privileged to be here, to be having such an important conversation in this time. And there's only one person that I would be up at literally the 11th hour for to have this conversation, but I'm so privileged and I'm just blessed to be here today. So thank you, Pastor. I love you. And I'm excited to get things started here soon.
Ebonee, we love you so much. And listen, your pastor, your church, your community, we are so godly proud of you. You are one of our bright, shining stars in the galaxy of ministry, in the galaxy of community. Thank you. I told First Lady when I made the decision to come on, I said, I got to get Eb on here. I got to get Eb on here. And then, listen, this is my little big brother, a young lion who is a prince in the city of Los Angeles, no stranger to any of us. He's an honorary member of the church that I'm privileged to pastor. I'm claiming him as such, a celebrity in his own right. He's a celebrity just by virtue of his last name. That Ridley-Thomas legacy is so rich, but undoubtedly, this young lion has made a name for himself. He can stand on the basis of his own scholarship, on the basis of his own success, with his mom and dad laying the foundation for him to build on. A Morehouse graduate, a former California legislator. He will forever be my assemblyman. And now the executive director, chief strategist for the African American voter registration, education, and participation. Listen, his name is the Honorable Sebastian Ridley-Thomas. What's cracking, man?
Man, we get ready to get going. You done gassed us up. I can't wait to hear what Ebonee has to say. And thank you for the invitation. Southern St. Paul family, God bless you. Good evening. And I'm so glad that we're in fellowship, especially on a topic like this. This is so critical for what we need to pay attention to.
I told First Lady, man, you two, listen, I woke up with this on my mind on yesterday. And you two is whom God just clearly laid on the canvas of my heart. There's so much to talk about tonight. I'm struggling to find a starting place. So I'm just going to jump in the deep end of the pool. We're going to be in not 12, but 15 feet of water tonight. I hope y'all can swim or you got your life jackets. Y'all ready? Ebonee. Let's start with you tonight. Let's start with you, Eb. What's all this noise about in the Black community? Why are Black people angry and white folks seem to be chilling? At least not all white folks, I may add. You know, there's a multitude and no shortage of good white people in the world. But what is this Black rage about? And may I ask, is it warranted and is it justifiable? What's all this noise about?
Yeah, I love that you called it Black Rage because I think that's so fitting. I think one of the first things is when you kind of see the spectrum of how Black people in this country are feeling right now, I think the first thing is like being cautious of telling people like how and in what way to process their grieving and their mourning and their lament. So whether they're enraged, whether they're extremely sad, whether we're grieving, mourning, whatever it looks like, it's important to like give space for people to feel how they're feeling. And the truth of the matter is, I love that you started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I was actually thinking about this yesterday, thinking about how as children, we're pledging allegiance to a country that for centuries and decades, since the first Africans arrived in this country, has never created systems and structures for us to navigate through. Yet there's been this beautiful like tapestry of Black resilience that we've been able to like funnel through to get to the year 2020. And in that tapestry, there's been a Black president, and there's been Black people who have risen to really high places in our country, really high places of stature. We've owned businesses, we've amassed wealth, we've been able to do all of these things, but yet and still people think that and I was in fact taught that America was a Christian nation, was a nation that was founded on equality, the pursuit of happiness and justice and equal access for all. But that's never been the case for Black people in this country. It has never for one day been the case. And all you have to do is read the Constitution, read any of the documents, the Bill of Rights, the documents from the beginning of the start and formation of this nation. And we were never in mind. In fact, we were 3/5 of a human being when the nation was coming into being. So when you take all of these things into account and you get to the year 2020 and things just look different, but they're wrapped in a different name. So right now it may not be slavery, but there's a prison industrial complex. And it may not be that we don't have access to higher education, but our schools don't have the same quality and resources that other schools. And then when you look at the fact that Black people can be killed by the state with impunity, like just lives slaughtered in the streets. And we hear these names being funneled through the streets like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. So you can understand how centuries of grief just mounting on our shoulders. Like I'm standing on the grief of my parents who are standing on the grief of their parents, there's like generations of Black trauma and grief that we're trying to process through in real time that we have access to through social media and through the things that we're seeing on TV and seeing on our news feeds and hearing with our friends and so on and so forth. So when you take all of these things into consideration, yeah, we're mad. Absolutely. There's a lot going on, and it doesn't seem like the needle is being pushed far enough toward equality for Black people in this country. So what we're hearing and what we're experiencing in the streets, and what we're hearing and what we're experiencing on our timelines, and what you're seeing is people rising up in a way that we've always done. It just is public now because we have social media, but you see like this uprising of people. In fact, I don't even think that there's like rioting and looting. I think what we're experiencing is an uprising in this country. This is the modern day civil rights movement. So if people ever wonder what you would have done in the 60s, whatever you're doing now is what you would have done then. If you're doing nothing now, you would have done nothing then, because this is like the hour that our generation is experiencing. And it's a range of emotions. There's hope and lament. There's screaming and there's mourning. There's grief. And then there's like people who are experiencing this like revolutionary joy by way of supporting Black businesses and doing all these different things. So there's kind of a spectrum of emotions and ways that we're choosing to process the moment that we live in, just so we can survive and get to another day, because it feels like it's really hard to catch our breath.
So you mean to tell me that we are not a bunch of thugs and not a bunch of heathens who is looking for an opportunity just to vandalize our community? We are not who the narrative that they say that we are. This, you use the word centuries. This is generations. This is decades, years of trauma, years of pain, years of being just, for the lack of a better word, having a knee on our neck. So you suggest that this is warranted. This is justifiable. What say you, Sebastian?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of things, particularly in light of the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Kentucky's decision to issue a Class D felony indictment recommendation in the grand jury of in Lexington. I forget the county that they're in. I think it's Jefferson County grand jury to forward that indictment on a terminated officer of the Lexington Police Department. It's really mourning, and it's a little different than I've seen in a while. I remember more the Trayvon Martin decisions with respect to the stand your ground law and how George Zimmerman was acquitted. That's what I see as of the last 48 hours, but it's unique because most of the narratives have really been captured around men. But what has occurred is that we realize that women are fundamental, Black women are fundamental to this discussion in ways that we really hadn't explored because we were so focused on men that had been killed in state violence and even in community violence. You know, it was a dangerous summer. There were a lot of shootings, and that added to what we're seeing. And this is all on top of COVID and the worst economy since the Great Depression. So what I have observed here in the streets in the Crenshaw district, in West Adams, not far from the church, on the west side in downtown, in San Pedro, in all areas around greater Los Angeles, is a deep sense of pain because Black women have relied on the rules to try to protect them. They tried to make a way out of no way, tried to make democracy better for everybody. And when you do that, just like that Pledge of Allegiance, the social contract is that you're going to get your fair share. You're going to get your day in court, that you're going to realize the American dream. But to your interlude, Bishop, it's clear that they don't really care about us. And they'll even do women dirty. Women who did nothing wrong in their home. My question is, at what point do we realize for Black people, their home is their sanctuary as well? Because I know a few communities where you go and knock on somebody's door at midnight. There's a sermon about a knock at midnight. Who knocks at midnight unless you're going after a terrorist or somebody that's getting ready to blow something up?
Now, I'm going to get into that, big brother. I'm going to get into that because it is said that Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend was under criminal investigation, and the narrative that is coming out of Louisville, Kentucky, Jefferson County, that they will want us to believe is that the knock at midnight was indeed justifiable. But we're going to get to that. I promise you, I want to exegete and dissect that even more. This whole Pledge of Allegiance thing, listen, I'm an NBA fan. I'm a Laker diehard, and I'm seeing all of these NBA guys in the bubble having different slogans on the back of their jerseys, Black Lives Matter and education reform and equality and all of this stuff now. But listen, I think the NFL owed Colin Kaepernick an apology and
100%.
And a paycheck.
And a job, yep.
Yeah. You know what? And I want you to get in on this, Sebastian, but Ebonee, you said and a job. Listen, keep your freaking job. Give me retro pay, just retro pay me, and pay me for what I would have made if I was yet playing. And listen, you can keep your job. Give me my check, give me my money, and you owe me a public apology. Now y'all chew on that.
Public apology. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Go ahead, Sebastian.
Well, no, Ebonee, I think you were going somewhere. I'm going to come back after you on this one.
I was just going to say on this Kaepernick piece, everything that we're seeing right now as it relates to sports media, the Black Lives Matter on their shoes, the collars on their necks, the name on their back, all of it started with Colin Kaepernick, what was that, 4 years ago or something along those lines? And so what we're seeing now that's happening in these industries with Black athletes all across, and not just Black athletes, but mainly Black athletes all across the spectrum in basketball, football, you name it, started all the way back then. And what's interesting to me too is what the argument back then was, that what he was doing was disruptive. That wasn't the way to he was protesting this country and protesting the flag. Nothing ever had anything to do with the flag. But what Colin Kaepernick was talking about all those years ago is still what athletes, what Black people in this country are talking about all these years later. And that he was crucified for it. And he lost endorsements. He lost all of these things for it. So I couldn't agree more that the NFL owes him a public apology. They owe him all of his money back. He got his endorsements back, and even some others, but every ounce of dime he would have made ever since then, they owe him all of those things back. So I couldn't agree more. And if he wanted to play football, great. And if not, that's fine too. He'll be all right. But my point is that what Colin Kaepernick was talking about all those years ago, we're still talking about today. And what we see athletes doing right now, that is socially acceptable now, it just wasn't all those years ago. And he was publicly crucified and lost so much for it at the time. So I couldn't agree more that he is owed a public apology and every coin that he would have made in back pay.
Punitive damages. Yes. Go ahead, Sebastian.
I would say, I want to get us from an employed mindset to an ownership mindset. Colin Kaepernick needs a slice that Jay-Z was going to get. Colin Kaepernick can do a lot more than that of a team. And I got the perfect team.
Wow.
Old racist Dan Snyder's Washington football team.
I knew you were going to say that.
Because that reckless man, let me just call the record for everybody. That man said 2 years ago that he would never take a slur against Native Americans out of a professional football team. That sucks. That does not perform on the football field. He had a chance to rebrand, and he is doing so poorly that his wealthy, white, billionaire co-owners are trying to sell the team because they cannot stand the way that the guy's done it. He wrote in an email, he said under no circumstances, he used the word never. But there was an old song from an era that most of us three won't know, but our grandparents might. What a difference a day makes. 24 hours.
Listen, y'all, hit the share button, hit the like. This is Pastor X. You're watching a special edition of On the Spot tonight. My guest is two of America's brightest, most gifted intellectuals that you will find anywhere on the planet. The Honorable Sebastian Ridley-Thomas, as well as just listen, I don't know what to say about her. We're so godly proud of Ebonee Rice, a daughter of ministry here at the Southern St. Paul Church, who's doing big things on the East Coast. We're dealing with this whole issue of the current climate and culture that we find ourselves in the context of Breonna Taylor and our other beautiful Black brothers and sisters who have been killed at the hands of excessive police force. Breonna Taylor was shot multiple times while in her home by police carrying out what is an alleged drug investigation. The question is tonight, was the police justified in their use of force? The decision to charge Detective Brett Hankerson with wanton endangerment instead of murder, instead of manslaughter. In some eyes, it is the right decision, while in others, it's an atrocity, it's a tragedy. Undeniably, and we're going to deal with this tonight, undeniably, there were many flaws, many inconsistencies found in the process, but there still, in my opinion, should be justice for Breonna. There should be some level of accountability. Sebastian, I want to come right back to you. Ebonee, I'm going to circle around and get back to you. But Sebastian, are you surprised and disappointed, or are you disappointed and not surprised? Wait a minute, I want to give it to you again. Are you surprised and disappointed, or are you disappointed but you're not surprised that these white officers wasn't charged? Where did the system fail? If the system failed at all, I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know that tonight.
Systemic racism means that you have unequal outcomes for similar activities on a consistent basis based on race.
Say that again. Say that again.
Systemic racism, one of its features, and the challenge with it, is that you have unequal outcomes consistently based on race. It is not a pattern in the United States to execute warrants on non-violent criminal investigations in households that are white-led. What you see with no-knock warrants when used in a non-violent situation is a pattern of race that becomes very problematic. We had it in Los Angeles when Daryl Gates had the battering ram and used to go and knock houses off their foundation in the middle of the night until the ACLU got them to stop in 1986, the year before I was born, because it would disturb a community if at 2 a.m. in the morning you had an occupying force trying to bust into a drug house that happened to be somebody's grandmama's house. And sometimes they got it wrong. It is not surprising in the sense that not everybody has been reformed, but it is extremely disappointing that the best that the Attorney General of the state of the Commonwealth of Kentucky could do was come up with a felony because a bullet was errant. A bullet went into somebody else's residence.
Yeah.
What if there had been a child there? I read
there was a child there
in the second home, but in Breonna Taylor's home, not unlike Tina Jefferson, right? Mm-hmm. In San Antonio, or in the suburb of San Antonio, Texas. It is not unreasonable to believe, because her property was not the core part of the investigation, the drug investigation, as best we know. I went and read the indictment because I wanted to be well informed even before you called, Bishop. But I sat and read it, and it was a secondary site that they were concerned about doing investigation on. Why do that in the middle of the night? Secondly, Breonna Taylor's death is so upsetting, and the way that the law enforcement system has grappled with it over these many months, taking so long. You could say it was a thorough investigation. It's been exhaustive in some ways. The FBI crime lab came up with ballistics results that the Kentucky State Police didn't. The FBI crime lab was much more clear. The Attorney General said, well, I don't know, it's inconclusive.
I'm gonna get to that.
It's too deep. It's not I'm not gonna call it a cover-up. I'm just gonna say it is too subjective. I'm almost at the point where I don't want prosecutors to be elected because it's hard to trust what you find.
It's so many moving parts. Wait.
Doc, I'm gonna leave you with this and be quiet for a few minutes. Let Ebonee slay the audience. If one of them had been shot, one of the cops, like Hankerson, it would have been somebody like Breonna Taylor that was there to make sure they were all right and get them to the hospital. What did they do for Breonna? In the minutes where her life left her, where she might have been able, you know what the report said, between a few seconds and 2 minutes, she could have saved her life.
Can I put you on the spot tonight? On Friday night, Sebastian Ridley-Thomas, the Honorable Sebastian Ridley-Thomas. Can I put you on? I want to throw a curveball tonight.
Dr. Xavier was on Friday, so I guess I'll do it. I'll take it.
I want to put you on the spot. For the record, are you surprised and disappointed, or are you disappointed and not surprised?
I'm disappointed and not surprised.
Ebonee, I'm going to give you the same question. Are you surprised and disappointed, or are you disappointed and not surprised that these officers wasn't charged? Where did the system fail, if the system failed at all?
The system failed way before Breonna Taylor. The system failed when they set up police officers in a 4-block radius to maintain this one community in the zip code where her house was, not for her boyfriend's criminal activity, but for criminal activity in the area in general. The system failed way before Breonna Taylor when they showed up in plain clothes to her home. And there's eyewitnesses who say that the police officers showed up in plain clothes. The system failed so long ago, before Breonna Taylor even entered the equation, before Breonna Taylor even entered the scene. The system failed a long time ago. But with this particular, in this instance, I'm disappointed. I will say that I'm surprised as well. Not because I thought that the decision would be different, but because I was hopeful for a different outcome for our sister's life. So I'm disappointed and I'm surprised at the same time.
Wow, I love it. I love it. I recently heard that the system is not broken.
At all.
It's working just fine, because
exactly.
It was never designed to work for Black folks in the first place. So this is the same country whose constitution, Ebonee, you said earlier, declared that any person who was not free would be counted as 3/5 individual. The interest and the plight will be counted as 3/5 of an individual of a free person. So any enslaved person will be declared that they are 3/5 of a unslaved person, a free individual. The Constitution
Correct.
In this country, in this nation, the interests and the values, the plight of slaves was never intended to be represented in government in the first place. Are there two Americas? One for the haves, another for the have-nots. One for the whites, one for people of color. Are there two Americas? My little big brother, the Honorable Sebastian Ridley-Thomas, tonight, I'm so godly proud of you, man. And I say this publicly on the mountaintop, as I have in private, man. For you to be, both of you all, for you to be as young as both of you all are representing the way that you do. I'm just so godly proud of you. But Sebastian, you served in the legislature. You know, is there two Americas, man? One for white folks, one for Black folks, one for red states, one for blue states. There seemed to be a difference. There seemed to be a difference. Are Blacks afforded the same rights as white folks?
Doc, let me say something extremely painful. There are, just behind me, I got this map up for a reason. There are two Los Angeleses. There's one that's east of La Cienega and one that's west of La Cienega. There's one that's north of the 10 freeway and one that's south of the 10 freeway. And we have to reconcile that. Now, arguably, income and income inequality, income disparity is a more determinative factor with this stuff, because I know of no wealthy neighborhood, certainly not a wealthy white one, in America where anyone executes a no-knock warrant unless you're building a bomb and they got you on camera and you're a national security threat or a homeland security threat. They just don't do that. They will afford them the courtesy of coming and knocking on their door in the morning and letting them know that they should advise their lawyers to come on down to have a conversation. Now, the number of Black people, Latino people, disenfranchised whites who get hauled off, people who are without political power and a say in the system. We say the marginalized people in society, those who are vulnerable, the homeless, the low income, the single parent who is working, the child who's a latchkey kid because mom or dad has to go on, or grandma are there in foster care. Those are the people who the weight of the criminal justice system falls most hardly on. And the thing with trigger happy policing and overzealous prosecutors is they're trying to get convictions, arrests, interrogations just to hit numbers, to seize property. And it's not a holistic view. Now, that's not all of law enforcement, but that's some of it. In the city of Los Angeles, we're much better off than we used to be. Why? Civilian oversight, subpoena power. What you're doing at the county is trying to get the county in a better position, not unsimilar to the city. Thank you for your hard work, Pastor, as a civilian oversight commissioner for the rogue ass, it's a church, sheriff's department. In Lexington, Kentucky, those protections were, some of them were there, some of them were not. That's why before the settlement, you saw record-breaking settlement for this kind of case, $12 million to the family. That's
what's $12 million, Ebonee? Was it hush money?
You're asking the question because you know what. Absolutely, it was hush money. I want to quickly answer your question about two Americas, because I think this is important. I actually don't think there are two Americas. I think there's one system that was created to function exactly how we're seeing it function, because it's functioned this way since we got here. And if you have a country that's founded on slave labor, that's founded on inequalities in general, then it will continue to function that way until it's overthrown and until there's a complete overhaul of the system. And until that happens, it's gonna function this way. There's gonna be haves and the have-nots. There's always gonna be an east of La Cienega and a west of La Cienega, as long as the system in every community, as long as the system continues to function the way that it functions now. Now about the $12 million. I mean, what's $12 million to this family that now has to mourn their daughter and their sister and their girlfriend and their friend, their cousin, their coworker for the rest of their lives? And the reason why it was such a large amount of money, and the reason why people were suspicious of the fact that it was such a large amount of money, it's not that they didn't deserve that and so much more, but it's that this decision that was looming over this community and over this family since that settlement happened, there was an understanding that this would be the outcome. And then this $12 million would appease this family and would appease the community and would appease all of the people who are attached to Breonna's life and all of those of us in the streets who have been rally crying her name for the last 188 days. So this $12 million.
They thought we would sell out. They thought we would sell out in the back room for a chicken dinner. That's what they thought.
That $12 million is a chicken dinner when it comes to the life of someone who was innocently slain. And then there's all this conversation about why they were there and the no-knock warrant and all of these things. And I think what people are getting exhausted by, I'm getting exhausted by, are these like narratives about people's lives, about Breonna's life, her boyfriend's life, what they should have been doing, what they were doing. Like,
oh, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. I promise you.
Okay.
I'm getting to that. Listen.
Okay, we'll talk about her life then.
Listen, I need you all to hit the share button. Those of you who are listening to this, I know you are enjoying it. I know you are being blessed. This is Pastor X on the spot, Friday night special edition. the Honorable Sebastian Ridley-Thomas. Ebonee Rice is my special guest tonight. Hit the share button. Let's get this word out tonight. Listen, Ebonee, while you got the mic, and I'm getting back to my little big brother Sebastian, okay? But while you have the mic, last night I'm chilling at home watching the Laker game. TNT, Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, both goes on record, cautions the world not to lump the Breonna Taylor case as being the same as George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, two athletic icons, superstars, they go on record and seem to think that this Breonna Taylor case, and let me preface my statement by saying they shouldn't be demonized because we all have independent thought. But I thought it quite strange for Barkley and Shaq to say that this Breonna Taylor case is not the same as George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery. They seem to think that it's two different things. What say you all? I want to hear both of you all's perspective on this.
I think the question would be, who is accountable then when someone is murdered? In general, in every situation at the loss of life, there should be accountability for that loss of life. And what we tend to do in this country when it comes to Black people being slain by the state, by police, is really unpack their lives in this like very public and specific way, where you go through the lists of everything they've done, who they've been associated with, what those people have done. Like, you have this character assassination of people who are dead and who were murdered at the hands of police versus other people like Dylan Roof, for example, who like there's so many, Kyle Rittenhouse, for example.
Dylan Roof is the young white boy in Charleston, South Carolina.
Massacred,
went into a church, Mother Emanuel AME Church, and sat in for Bible study. And after Bible study, took out a semi-automatic rifle and massacred good, beautiful Black people.
Black people. And then just recently I was watching something on the news, and no, I'm sorry, it was online. And Kyle Rittenhouse, he's the gentleman who shot 2 protesters in Louisville, drove across state lines, also with a firearm, 17 years old. And he was called a little boy who was protecting his community.
Absolutely.
He wasn't in his community. He was in a whole different state. And he came with the intention to, that's why you carry a rifle across state lines, with the intention to shoot protesters. And he was called a little boy. And I think we do this thing where some children like Kyle are able to be little boys, and some like Tamir and Trayvon Martin are thugs and grown men who have these egregious pasts that we can't reconcile. And we do that so we can justify watching their bodies on TV being slain in the street, sitting in the street for hours with knees on their neck, or being killed in their homes. We do this thing where we demonize dead Black bodies to like reconcile and justify their deaths in our minds. And when it comes to Breonna Taylor, when it comes to George Floyd, this comment about not lumping them together in the same way based on their past, in my opinion, is ridiculous. It wouldn't matter what the paths were, because there are some people who can be apprehended and who you can have a conversation with to get to a conclusion of a matter. And then there's other people who are slain and don't get the luxury of having a car ride to a precinct to sit down and have a conversation. So because of that, I think all of the middle stuff, like it doesn't concern me. I'm not concerned at all about Breonna's past. I'm not concerned at all about George Floyd's past. What I understand is that there's blood crying from the ground, and somebody has to be accountable, and they didn't kill themselves. Somebody killed them. And that's the conversation that we need to be having, not a conversation about how you can compare them, what their pasts are, and what they should or should not have done in their lives.
You know, Sebastian, we say in the church, you know, that the church is the only place that shoot her wounded. That people are already wounded, and when they come into the four walls, we wound them some more. I'm already shot. I'm already going through. I'm already burdened. I'm already heavy laden. And then when I get into the house of worship, those who are supposed to love me, those who are supposed to disciple me, those who are supposed to work with me, we shoot our wounded. Is this an example of what is going on? To Ebonee's point, there seems to be a pattern, Sebastian, in these cases, whether it's Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, whether it's her boyfriend was a drug dealer, you know, but whether it's Breonna Taylor, her boyfriend, whether it's George Floyd or others alike, there seems to be a pattern that we criminalize, stigmatize, marginalize, and victimize the victim in order to appear justified in their transgression. Is this Breonna? Listen, is Shaq and Charles Barkley right, or are they wrong? They caution us not to lump Breonna Taylor into the same barrel that we got George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and others. Are they right or are they wrong?
The common thread is overzealous activity. And let me tell you, during this time of COVID, things are tense. The block is hot. Cops are under, the block is hot, Doc. Yeah. Cops are under immense stress. It's not an easy profession. You know, I don't know that all of our those who are watching this know, there is a severe shortage of law enforcement officers. Nobody wants to go into the profession. There are decades of experienced professionals, good, bad, and otherwise, who are getting off the force because they're tired. There are people who are too young, who are too inexperienced, and who are slightly unsophisticated, who are getting in there and they're being put in situations that are very difficult to process. What the officers believed is that after they followed this flawed procedure, is that they were fired upon. And no question it was flawed. Under best standards and practices, you don't do no-knock warrants. There was only one witness that said that they identified themselves. The plainclothes piece was a difficulty. But in Kentucky, you are allowed to have firearms.
Right. You
are allowed to fire if you believe someone is intruding upon your home.
Right.
If a member of law enforcement is fired upon, they are allowed to fire back and use deadly force. Right. Now, what comes after that often is a very nuanced story. It's not black, it's not white. What Ebonee is so critically right upon is that when you invest in suppression, crime suppression, over intervention, peace building, and prevention, you have issues. And the failed war on drugs, where, see, if they had been smuggling opioids, I don't know what the drug was, I can't recall. But if it had been an opioid issue, the concept would have been treatment. We're talking about structural racism. But because it wasn't framed like that, and because everybody wasn't talking about healing and recidivism and getting people away from incarceration, which you see in a lot of other states with opioids that are ravaging white people who are on meth, okay? You see this over-policing, this over-the-top response, even from cops. They could have approached that house in daylight in the morning. They would have realized the woman was an EMT. They probably would have afforded her respect. They didn't even acknowledge what her profession was. They said, oh, a car was in her name. from a previous acquaintance, not even a current acquaintance. That's the thing that is so disappointing, is that it was a systemic failure of law enforcement administration. So what Barkley and O'Neill are right about is that every situation is different. What they probably could have included is that the pattern is an intense suppression effort in a Black community. It's like over the top. It doesn't, the punishment, the attempted punishment does not meet the crime. What is the crime? Being suspected of being a part of a drug enterprise. Are you a drug pusher? There was no suggestion of that. Have you injured anybody in the drug trade? Are you violent yourself? Are you harming your immediate community? No. Do they even know what the woman's profession is? It's unclear. Had they done their homework, any detective in this country who is a full-time law enforcement officer would have known to be conscientious and think about that. I think COVID-19 has done a couple of things. One is pulled the mask away, but it's also the veil away. It's given us all a lot more time to look and pay attention to these things, but it's also put a lot of stress so that there were systemic failures in the execution of that warrant, in the management of those 3 officers, and in their decision. To me, they had impaired judgment. That's the commonality between the officer that sat on George Floyd's neck and the people that attacked that door. And I got to tell you, had it been in the equivalent of Beverly Hills in Lexington, wouldn't have been a problem. They would have come, they would have alerted the person's lawyer before they went to go see him, and wouldn't have pulled their guns.
Got you. Eb, hit it and quit it, because I want to turn the corner.
I mean, I address this question first. I agree. In terms of, I think that the comment made by Barkley and by O'Neill, I think that's ridiculous. I agree that every situation has to be approached differently, but across the board, I think having these conversations in these type of silos is unproductive. And that's my comment on that, is there's a better use of our time.
Got you. Ebonee, while you got the mic, there's a lot of misinformation in the news and on social media. It becomes difficult to weed through and separate what is authentic and what is inauthentic. However, what do you say to allegedly her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, firing a shot, hitting a policeman who, for the record, the boyfriend is on record denying that if he knew it was a police officer,
absolutely,
he wouldn't have shot. But
absolutely.
You're in the middle of the night, somebody's barging through, there's a no-knock search warrant. It's so much misinformation out there, almost to confuse us, you understand, that you don't know what to believe. So what do you say to the misinformation that is in the news media and that in the news cycle and on social media?
I would caution us to, when we see things on our news feeds and when we see things in the news, I would caution us to, what happens is misinformation preys on your emotions. It preys on the way you cognitively process information, and it disproportionately affects communities that are Black and brown, and communities that aren't always represented in the best light in the news. So what happens is you're so used to hearing certain narratives and seeing certain images that you would just believe them and absorb them as true. So my caution to people is to question everything and to do your own research. There is the warrant, not the warrant, I'm sorry, the report became public. You can watch the entire Attorney General give his spiel over the decision that came out yesterday. You can watch it online to understand and learn for yourself. But again, I think the bottom line when it comes to these cases, everyone's trying to figure out the details. And for me, it comes down to the fact that someone was murdered and somebody needs to be responsible for that murder. But when you see things online that are preying upon your emotions and that are sensationalized for the purpose of getting you to have a certain type of response, I would pause and I will be suspicious of those things that I'm seeing, even if they come from trusted resources and trusted voices that you support, because our favorite artists, our favorite rappers and singers, our favorite pastors, our favorite commentaries are all sharing information and thoughts and opinions. So there's this groundswell of things that you can believe in. But in these instances, it's important to research everything, to look into things for yourself, and not believe everything that you see online, because what's happening now, there's civil unrest. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So you're seeing COVID numbers fluctuate on your timelines all day, and you're seeing results of cases. You're seeing election information. There's so much going on. If you're in California, particularly, you're watching the fires. There's every issue that can be heightened right now is rising to the surface and being heightened right now. So what's happening online and what's happening on TV is that there's an influx of things for us to grab hold to and believe in. And it either makes you overwhelmed or makes you just fatigued, like literally news fatigue. So what happens is you're seeing something, you're believing it, internalizing it as true, and then you're never questioning it because you're just too exhausted because of all the messages coming in. So take a beat, and for the things that you're particularly vested in, the things that affect your life directly, that you have an interest in, research, look into everything for yourself, because misinformation is intended to make you take on a belief system or take on a thought that you may not have originally intended for yourself to have, but because there's so much coming at us at one time, it's really hard to decipher what's real and what's not real. And that is the intention. And it's only going to get worse leading up to the election. So if you need to take a break from social media, if you need to turn off the news and just focus on one storyline at a time, then do what you need to do so that you're as informed as possible and not just following whoever your favorite people are that you're following online, whatever it is that they're telling you, like Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal.
I have two daughters, two beautiful daughters, and one handsome son, my namesake. Shout out my daughter, my oldest child, Jordan Simone. She's texting me as I'm on live with you all tonight. A recent graduate, well, several years ago, if not 3 or 4 years or better, she graduated from Cal State University, Northridge, and Eb, I believe she got the same degree in communications. But listen, they think daddy is crazy. You know, I have peers, I have friends, colleagues who think daddy is crazy because sometimes my thought is independent of mainstream thought. And it's not that I'm crazy, it's just that I got good sense, as a matter of fact.
And there's an agenda behind everything that you see. There is an agenda.
Yeah,
everything.
Listen. Study to show thyself approved.
That's it.
Not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Sebastian, I'm coming around the corner, the mountain, here I come. What do you say, Sebastian, to when it comes to matters like this? There's a school of thought out there that says Black people are just emotional thinkers and we're not critical thinkers. Are we emotional, or can we be both?
Well,
emotional and critical thinkers.
Doc, I wouldn't want a religion that I couldn't feel sometimes, and I think deeply on faith. And my faith looks...
Drop the mic, Sebastian! Drop the mic!
My faith looks to thee, O Lamb of Calvary, Savior divine. So I believe that for Black people, and this is a part of our impact on culture, right? Because Ebonee referenced celebrity, you two former basketball players that are now sports newscasters. We have an outsized impact on culture relative to our population and position.
Wait. That's a tweet. We have an outsized impact on culture based upon our size and population.
We're only 13% of the population. We generate about 30 to 40% of the spend in culture. We influence clothing. We influence sports. We influence music. We are overrepresented in those culture creator fields, those things that make Asia the NBA's largest market.
Gotcha.
Those things that took baseball and transformed it into America's pastime, the unheralded history. I'm talking about the stories they didn't tell us in those worn out textbooks when we all went to LAUSD schools, me over at 32nd Street and Baldwin Hills Elementary, if we're gonna call the roll. As a result, we have to appreciate that we need to have cathartic moments. You know, whites get to go to these punk rock concerts and get to have these marches and be mad about masks, right? That's the big thing that whites are getting angry about. And that they're losing their country, and that brown people are coming across the border, and black people, black queens like Ebonee are getting their jobs at those national education nonprofits, that they're slipping, you know, Becky's mad, okay? She is. That X is building churches and congregations and mobilizing the people lest they perish. So whites are feeling encroached upon. Blacks are finally finding a way to flex our muscles because, unlike the civil rights movement, we have data and mass media to get the word out. It's not about watching Bull Connor on the TV with the Bulldogs anymore in the Deep South. It's about these major metropolitan areas where Black people are walking their dogs through Central Park, getting some exercise during the pandemic, and a white woman files a false police report and is caught on camera and fired less than a week later from her billion-dollar financial services institution. Or some whites up in San Francisco, in Pacific Heights, one of the wealthiest communities in the state of California, call it Billionaires Row, up in San Francisco. Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi live right over there. And a white couple see a brown man. He happened to be, I think, Asian, Filipino maybe, or Latino, just a brown-skinned man on the curb of a property writing Black Lives Matter. And do you know what these fools had the nerve to do? A white couple about 40, 50 years old, maybe late 50s. Did y'all see that? They went up to the man and said, "Who are you? Why are you writing on this curb? We're going to call the police on you." The man said, "What concern is it of yours? We know everybody that lives here. We know you're not supposed to be in this neighborhood." That man had been a homeowner for longer than they had lived there. And he called the police on them. They got shamed. The husband worked at an organization called Franklin Templeton, a $1 billion company in the Bay Area, financial services. The wife ran a makeup company. It's a time where we can assert ourselves, and we have to raise our voices, and we have to translate our anger into action. So at AVREP, Bishop, Ebonee, we're saying march to the polls. Take your grief about Breonna Taylor and translate it. I believe in theology it's called transmutation. Take your pain and say, "Though they slay me, yet will I trust them. Yet will I trust that a better day is coming." And I applaud Ebonee. See, I was a little cynical. I was thinking half full, the stuff isn't gonna go right. Ebonee is the hope. And that's why I'm your little big brother, because sometimes I get a little cranky and old school, but Ebonee is the hope. She said she expected better because she and Black women her age, in our age range, let's say, they want to be able to say, "My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing." And there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to. And the decision, I mean, it was such a thing. You know, this is climate change week for some people. They're talking about forest and all this other stuff. All that Gavin Newsom said, "Oh, we're gonna get rid of gas-fired cars. Everybody gonna have to have an electric vehicle." All that was overshadowed because a Black woman was done wrong in Lexington, Kentucky.
Listen, I love it, man. Both of you all are so profound and substantive, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. Listen, those of you who are watching us live tonight, I need you to stick with me. I got some rapid fire questions that I want to throw at our guests. You're listening to On the Spot Special Edition Friday night. This is Pastor X. Hit the share button right now. I beseech you by the mercies of God that you like us because we like you. Now listen, it is said that the facts of the case, I'm going back to Breonna Taylor. It is said that the facts of the case, Ebonee and Sebastian, did not merit persecution. But the only problem with that is we don't know the facts of the case. The question I have tonight, shouldn't we know what evidence was presented to the grand jury by the prosecutor? Shouldn't we know that if the preponderance of evidence exonerates these officers, we say to the Kentucky Attorney General, why not make that evidence known? I mean, it would do so much. I mean, listen, if righteousness is on your side, we call for transparency tonight. It is almost as if the beautiful Black brother, I'm mad at him, the Attorney General of Kentucky, who's married to, who is it, the niece or the goddaughter of Mitch McConnell? I'm mad at you, Black man, you know? But I need to say to the beautiful Black brother who is the Attorney General in the state of Kentucky that if truth is on your side, bring truth to light. It is almost as if you are hiding something at best, or in the least bit, you're not being transparent. So should not those transcripts be released? The evidence that was presented? What do you guys say to that?
Yeah, yes, they should be. And that's the nuance that we were speaking to earlier. And this is also why, to your point earlier, Sebastian, about citizen review boards, this is why they're so important. All of this information should be made public. There should be a review board outside of the police office that has an opportunity to review it. And furthermore, this is why there is this push in communities to defund the police. And a lot of people have issues with that because a lot of people hear that and they think what people are saying is that we don't need police officers in our community. But what people are saying is a redistribution of those funds because you all aren't being transparent and in a lot of cases not doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway. So there should be other resources and other supports outside of the police that help with community issues, that help review these types of cases so that there can be transparency, so there can be protections for Black and brown people in our communities, and so that we can ensure that there's accountability when things go wrong. And things will go wrong. In every system, things go wrong. But there has to be accountability. And in this country, that hasn't happened. So these documents, all of them should absolutely be made public. And that's a huge point of contention. That's the whole point of it. Nobody is saying that these things that happen in secret, that if these are the facts of the case, that we want something to happen that isn't just and isn't righteous. People want justice and they want righteousness. And the fact of the matter is, I'll keep saying it, there has to be accountability for this beautiful sister's life. And there hasn't been, not just for her, but there's a tapestry of situations where that hasn't happened. And so in this instance, all of these things should be made public. All of these records should be released so we can see the results. We can see what happened. We can see what happened in these conversations. We know that there was a discrepancy between when Breonna was shot and when she actually died. There were moments there that could have saved her life. We need to know all of that nuance so we can really understand what's going on in this case. And we feel like, and if there was truth and there was justice that actually was being served and right, then you would have no problem releasing them. It's happened before. That's not a difficult thing to do. So that's what people are calling for. And that's one of the reasons behind the entire defund the police movement that's happening across cities like Los Angeles and actually all across the country that have been happening for years, because this type of thing keeps happening. There's no accountability and there's no protections for Black and brown people in our communities.
Listen, Ebonee, I don't know where I stand just right now. I'm yet processing. I'm yet trying to study the facts of this whole defund the police movement. I don't know. I don't think I'm down with that. Now police reform, yes. Reallocation of funds, yes. But defund the police, I don't know.
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah. But if that's what it is, say that. Don't. Some words matter. These semantics, these games. If in fact we're calling for reallocation and we're taking so much money from the Los Angeles Police Department, who has $1 billion plus budget,
crazy,
and we're going to put some of that money into the inner city for our Black and brown children. Say that. My people perish because of the lack of knowledge. Words matter. So this whole defund the police movement, if we're calling for reallocation of funds, if we're calling for police reform, I'm down with that. But you got to change the label, because labels matter.
I would only add this. Ebonee, the reason why I've enjoyed her company since we were strolling in Atlanta in the Atlanta University.
Yes. People don't know you're my AUC brother.
Listen. Since Ben, Baptist from Los Angeles, kicking it on a red clay hill, way back. Listen though, she articulated exactly what it is. I'm gonna summarize very briefly. She said independent review. She said transparency. And Pastor, she wasn't off from what you're saying. Words matter. All of those things will help raise the level of dialogue and make the pain, it won't make it go away, but it'll make it easier to process.
No doubt, no diggity. And I'm with my spiritual daughter. I ain't against her. I'm holding her hand. I'm with both of you. I'm with all of it. I'm with the movement. But listen, this is a wonderful segue that I need to get to. Because Black folks, we need a plan. We need a plan. Listen, I'm down with the protests, but we need a plan. I'm down with marching, but listen, we are suffering from the void and vacuum, the vacancy of a substantive, legitimate, respectable plan. We can cuss, but we need a cure. We need to collectively, and all these preachers with big platforms, everybody, preachers, pastors, bishops, potentates, apostles, LeBron is doing what LeBron can do, and he only can do so much. How pathetic was it of the sheriff of the county of Los Angeles, Alex Villanueva, to call LeBron out and ask him to give $100,000. How pathetic is that, right? And listen, he needs to be checked on that. But Black folks, we need a plan. No more photo ops. Listen. I don't want to go to breakfast, lunch, or dinner with another politician who just talks what he says to me in my face, and behind our backs, they laugh at us in private. Just like they threw $12 million to Breonna Taylor's mother. It's an insult, as if we're going to sell out in the back room for a chicken dinner. We need a plan. And listen, Ebonee, Sebastian, I want to suggest, in the spirit of King, we got to hit them where it hurts. Can I tell you where it hurts? Money is their God. Money is their God. Economics. You know what King did? He shut down the whole bus line with the Montgomery boycott. He hit them where it hurt. I saw a blurb of Jesse Jackson today. He said, not one Black boy or Black girl should go to the University of Kentucky and play basketball. Not one should go and play football. You understand what I'm trying to say? We have to, all of these talks and discussions and protests and marches and everybody, no, we lack a plan. I want to share something with you all today. I was talking to a good friend of mine, and listen, I'm going to keep them anonymous, but they said I was talking to them about me preparing to have this talk with you all tonight, who I'm so proud of, Ebonee and Sebastian. I gotta let y'all go because Sebastian, he's yawning. It's past his bedtime, right? How's he yawning? And Ebonee, you on the East Coast, you wide awake. I got beauty in the beat.
Ebonee got stamina.
Listen, a good friend of mine, she said, X, here's the problem. No pun intended. This is no disrespect, but the LGBT community, they have their rights because they had a plan. Latinos, a plan. White men, they said, X, got a plan. We are the only people who suffer from a lack of having a plan. Our Asian brothers and sisters, a plan. What we gonna do? I'm tired of cussing, tired of fussing. Vote, we got to vote. Listen, that's our reasonable service. That's the least we can do. Do you understand? Voting, there's some things Jesus didn't talk to his disciples about because presumably he felt they already knew it. You understand what I'm trying to say? Now, if we gotta tell you good, beautiful Black people on this live tonight to vote, hang up now, get off this line. You should already know to vote. Here's the problem. Black people must come up with a plan. My name is Xavier Thompson. I approve this message. I don't know what y'all feel about that. Gotta have a plan.
Go ahead, Ebonee.
We gotta have a plan. We gotta have a plan. I'm sick and tired. We got to resist. We have to reject this white brand of Christianity who is—
Let's talk about that.
Who is passionate about being pro-life, but who is passive about the killing of Breonna Taylor.
Yes.
Passionate. Listen, Donald Trump tomorrow is nominating, we presume, a Supreme Court justice who is hardcore when it comes to Roe v. Wade and overturning it. Passionate about pro-life. That ain't the deal. How can you be passionate about pro-life, but you are passive about George Taylor, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd? You turn a blind eye. You like that preacher on the road to the parable of the Good Samaritan.
Samaritan, yeah.
No, we got to have a plan. We got to have a plan, and we suffer from not having a plan. And you know why they can take 6 months, Sebastian? Take 6 months to determine that they ain't gonna do nothing in the first place? Because they know we ain't got a plan. They know, listen, they know we gonna march, we gonna beat the bully pulpit, we're gonna do all that stuff, and then it's gonna be back business as usual. So I'm calling on us tonight. Eb, you start where you are. Sebastian, you start where you are. X, I'm gonna start where I am. Man, we gotta pull our resources together and not fight over who gonna be in charge and who gonna get the interview, and not fight whose name gonna be listed in the newspaper. Who cares? A charge to keep I have to serve this present age. Listen, it's been fun, but I gotta run. Maybe I gotta bring you two back and do part 2. Final remarks. Eb, we'll go with you first. Sebastian, you close us out. Final remarks.
I want to say this because many of you watching are my church family, even if you're not, wherever you're watching from. And this is my pastor who I love so deeply. And I think it's important to say this. As believers, if you're watching and you're a believer, if you're not, keep watching. But as believers, to Pastor's point a moment ago about voting being our reasonable service, I think what I have not heard a lot in this conversation among believers about the protection and the liberation of Black people in this country is that there has to be a concerted effort in prayer. And I know that sounds like we should just know that, but I think it's easy to get bogged down at the weight of everything happening and to neglect it. And Pastor, you said earlier today that God is in control. And I want to land this plane here because there are a few ways to pray. And the first is we can't neglect it on our knees. The second is toward the polls. The third, maybe in the streets, using your bullhorn, but praying, making sure that your local officials, that you email them, that you reach out to them, that you call them. In every city, there is a concerted effort toward the liberation of Black people. And there are a few organizations that are leading those. There is not usually one centralized leader. And so maybe that's one of the issues, but whatever city that you're in, wherever you live, you can look up. You can Google Movement for Black Lives. You can Google Black Liberation. You can look up what people are doing in your city. And if you don't like what's on that agenda, it is on you to go to those meetings, to put your voice as a part of that conversation, to add to the conversation and the contribution that those organizations are making to liberate all of us in this country. And the other thing to add to that is that I think there's this really important idea of both lament and hope, and those things coexisting. And if we understand that Jesus came into a world where there were Black and brown babies being slain just so that the Messiah would not come, and that's the world he came into, and that's still the world that we live in. There's still babies being slain, there's still people being slain, and there's no one being accountable for these murders. But we have a hope outside of everything in this world, and just to understand that and not forget that, because that's where we have to place our hope, and that's where we have to place our intention and our understanding, because otherwise we will perish in this country. There is no other way about it. That's how we've survived through generation after generation. You can look up any historical text that talks about and documents slavery and talks about how they'll talk about the gospel and how only God was able to see them through and get them out. You can look at any historical text outside of theology and they talk about that, because there is a fabric of Black resiliency that we each have, if you are alive today, that you have in this country. And it's important to use that and access that when it comes to adding to the conversation on Black liberty in this country that's been going on for a very long time, and do your part, whatever your part is. If you have resources, donate. If you can run for office, whatever your sphere of influence is, making sure that you do your part, because everybody has a part to play in this and no one can sit stagnant. So whatever it is that is your part, I'm going to urge you to get into the game, contribute to the conversation that's already happening in your community about the liberation of Black people, accountability, policing, everything. There is an agenda in every community, and the needle has been moving forward, whether we believe it or can see it or not. So to add your voice to that conversation and not to neglect our Savior in this entire kind of chaos that's happening, because there is a hope that we can cling to. And without that, you will perish in this situation, in this fight that we find ourselves in.
My. Ebonee Rice, so godly proud of you. Listen, continue to shine, continue to keep God at the center of your life, stay in his will. And I want you to know your future is bright in Jesus' name. Listen, Sebastian, my little big brother, the Honorable Sebastian Ridley-Thomas. Close us out with final remarks.
I'll leave you with this, and thank you so much for the opportunity to fellowship with you. I hope to come again in this format, either before or after the election. Know that I love everyone on this platform and that's watching. I'll leave you with a poem. From compromising things half done, keep us with stern and stubborn pride. And when at last the fight is won, God, keep us still unsatisfied.
Listen, Sebastian, keep on keeping on, man. We love you. I'm closing out with the Apostle Paul and with Tupac Shakur rocking in the background. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. Always bearing about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, the life also of Jesus may be manifest in our body. Father, in the name of Jesus, we pray that you've been glorified with our conversation tonight. We pray for the family of Breonna Taylor and every family in the earth, oh God, that has been victimized, that has been troubled, that has been demonized, traumatized at the hands of police officers, black on black crime, Lord, whatever the situation may be tonight, we cast it at your feet. We pray that you will heal the brokenhearted. We pray that you set the captives free. And now, God, as it relates to whoever the guilty are, we give them to you. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Father, do what you do. In Jesus' name, by faith, it is so. And so it is. Let it be. Amen. I love y'all.
Love you.
Love you. Thank you.
Take care.
I'm going to rock the Tupac. They're going to say, Pastor, listening to Tupac.